Hello and welcome to episode 8 of ASLA Virginia Presents Watershed Moments, where landscape architects, allied design professions, contractors, developers will get together and talk about the complicated world that we operate in. So today we're going to be building off of our last episode where we started discussing presenting like a salesperson and the experience that a landscape architects have with this. So we discussed the idea of a 60-second pitch to a prospective client and how this isn't done well in our industry. It's a simple enough topic, and in principle, it is, but it's extremely difficult in practice for a lot of reasons that we'll get into today. I'm joined today by PJ, as usual, landscape architect, planning evaluation coordinator for Virginia Beach's planning department. And we're going to start things off a little bit different. We're going to flip the script. Today, PJ, you're going to be interviewing us. And by us, I mean me, because we couldn't get anyone else. So I'm going to hand this over to you if you want to ask me.
This is awesome. I think this is perfect because this was my favorite week. I liked it. It was fun. It was challenging.
Yep.
I don't think we think about it enough. We either get in our comfort zone, kind of like you and I right now. We have a comfort zone. I can talk to you. I can tell you, hey, Gordon, as I get situated in my chair.
I was like, yeah, I'm leaning back. I got a drink in my hand.
Yeah, I'm out in the garage. It's all good. But we get comfortable, Like if I had to pitch to you and you to me right now, we'd probably talk like, two guys on a webcam right now on a Friday afternoon drinking a beer. And it's that, you have that calm,
Yep.
But on the other end, you have that nervousness of like, oh my gosh, I'm not like, how am I going to do, what's going to be, how am I going to grab their attention? Where am I going to go in
Right.
60 seconds to get my, to differentiate myself or my company, to attract you.
Because you've got all those goals running in your head. You're like, I need to go to this meeting and get this, and this done. And I can't blow this.
And you think of everything that you do and you're like, how am I going to stand out? And I think where some of us don't realize it, we try and spend so much attention to detail that we miss the connection, of just creating that solid vision and, being able to, at the end of that pitch, remain, engaged,
right,
or engaging, or, be prepared, for follow-ups and, the work that comes with it. So, well, I'm going to ask you, since we're kind of flipping the switch here, and you more so into sales and product,
right,
than I am, although I think we both are. You have a product, I have a city. We're trying to attract people to it. So,
and really too, for me, like it's a lot more about like, what is the service? And that's the same for you, right?
Yeah. I want to, like I was saying in our class, city's motto is community for a lifetime. And, I got to make you comfortable so that you can invest here, be part of our community, be prosperous here. And, when I say prosperous, we want you to stay, somewhere where you can raise a family, recreate, and they're going to come back.
Right.
We don't want them to leave for, better opportunities. We want those opportunities here.
Right.
So how'd you do it? How'd you work on your pitch?
It was a long process. So like, I had a bit of a bit of a leg up on the homework assignment. It's like,
Peter.
do you know when people like repeat the grade in elementary school? And like they come back and they're like, man, I'm the smartest one in the room now.
You got held back.
He got held back. That was me. That was me. And I was like, man, I got this. Like, this is something I've been working on since the last time I took this.
All right. So from the first time, what was the thing that challenged you the most? I mean, because I'll admit, when you really start to think about it and what Mike is trying to get us to, to connect with a potential client or a potential, friend, I'll say, you start to overthink it.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe us as a profession, with designing things, we typically communicate through our graphics, and then we communicate through our final product, and we say, here's a pretty picture, here's a completed project, look at the beauty. That's why you want to use us as a firm.
Right.
You don't have that all the time. So this exercise was, like I said, fun, but to me also it was intimidating. I'll use that word, because you get to think, but you don't want to be clumsy in your thought.
Yeah.
So what was the biggest challenge when you first took this, being in your position, to get this attention grabbing, point making statement down to where I'm engaged?
It's what I see with a lot of people who are first pitching and they haven't planned it out yet. It's really trying to do too much at one time, because we have a lot to offer as a profession, and I have a lot to offer for my business and service. And I think that the idea in your head is, I want to talk all about all these things that we can do to help you, but you're too focused on that, and you forget that this person is just meeting you, or that they may not even need your services, or they might have, there's so many variables, right? There's so many variables to consider, that I found that the difficult part was to realize that, okay, I can't give a pitch that is all about me, but it needs to be really all about the person I'm speaking to. That was the turning point. Like, once I started thinking about how I sound in the networking meeting or pitch or meeting of generalized points, it was usually about me and not about the person I'm speaking to. Because that really, once you get that helps you boil down all of these points that you want to cover into actually a small chunk of, like, what can I talk about that's actually meaningful to this person that I'm speaking with? And that helps you distill that list to a manageable level, right?
Mm-hmm. So one of the interesting things with that, and I kind of saw it a little bit on Wednesday, and I thought about it. How much do you placate to the scenario or the situation that you're in? Meaning, I'm going to put you in a scenario. So Wednesday, when we're in our little class, you're putting a pitch out to us. Okay. So I've never met you before. I don't know what you do. We met for the first time. There you go. Last Friday, when we were doing this, you said afterwards, I'm going out to, I think you were going out to like a microbrew.
Yeah, it was like an opening event for an architect in town.
Okay. So kind of two different environments. How does that alter your thought process on your delivery. And I'm kind of going, all right, so, you know, Mike was sitting there and Jen, and they were talking about, and I'm going to look over here because I got some notes, compliments board. But you know your 4 P's. So you got product, price, promotion, you know, place. Okay, we get that. That's with, you know, that's kind of with the pitch. But you also, to me, you also have that with your environment that you're in.
Right.
Casual, formal, you know, this, that, or the other. Having been in those multiple situations, do you adjust to that on how you're going to go about with your conversation or your pitch?
100%. And I'm actually going to point out too, before I start on what, why and how, I think it's important to realize too, like the idea of this pitch exercise that we're doing is not necessarily that we're going to say 60 seconds to someone that we meet, because that would be super awkward. Like,
exactly.
You're like, wow, you just blasted me with a lot of info, and I thought we were going to talk about like the football or basketball March Madness, and like we just really got serious. We're on a next level date. So that's not what it's intended for, but I think the pitch exercise is intended to like get us to think about how do we describe ourselves and realize that we're not doing that properly, but also that the pitch gets us to talk to one type of person and to see that there's other types out there, because how easily that pitch could change. So for me, getting to your question about that event, for instance, it goes to your typical idea of how you interact with people at an event, which is if you want to give a pitch, then you need to know who you're speaking to. So my first 10 minutes or 5, it depends on how long you're speaking with someone and how engaged they are. But first time I'm talking with someone, I'm asking questions about obvious stuff. What do you do? Do you live here? What kind of projects do you work like? And it'll lead into something that usually we're both interested in. I have a lot of weird interests that I get into, and I can usually pull a story to connect. And so once we have a connection, that's when I start to, that's only the time that I will ever talk about myself. It's usually me asking the other person questions. And it's more so it's turning the focus away from you and onto the person that you're speaking with. And I don't even know if they're a prospect. It may not be a fit. I just enjoyed speaking to this person and connecting with them. But until you know who you're speaking with and what they do and how they operate, you can't give a pitch. So that's kind of the first lesson I would say, is like everyone has some ability through experience to talk with others that they've never met before. And some have more of a knack for it than others. But the idea or the principle that's a takeaway from that is like, you need to understand who you're speaking with first, and you need to connect with them first before you start pitching anything. I mean, it should not ever be business until you think that there might even be a possibility that you have a further connection after that.
Mm-hmm. So how did you get there?
I drove a car. Sorry.
How did,
I couldn't help it.
How did you get to that comfort level, that, you know, knowledge level that took it out of a scripted, bulleted list and put it into a memorable, hey, I'm here to make a memorable connection to you?
Part of it's just my personality. Like I'm an idealist, as we've talked about in the past episodes. Like I like people and I like talking to people. And I felt like I had a knack for it, but I never thought about like the actual structure, like you just mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
until I started getting into this role where I was not a designer and I wasn't tied to my desk all the time, where I was doing AutoCAD drafting or working on renderings. And once I got into sales for this lighting company, I started trying to think like, well, I should probably figure out what it means to be a salesperson. Because I went in and took the job and I was like, yeah, okay, here we go. What do I got to do?
I know people, that's all that matters.
And so like we had this course back in 2020, and that's when I guess before I was just emulating what people in my office would do and not realizing that there could be other ways or even better ways. And this is not a knock on my colleagues, but it's just, I like to research things and understand them. And so after Mike Nally's class that I took in 2020 for the company, I was like, oh my God, there's like actually methods to sales that one should probably understand before going out. And I realized that I wasn't doing it effectively. Basically, like that taught me that I was not doing it effectively. And I mean, I started reading books, and it sounds silly, but like there is really a lot of information out there that you can sift through. And actually I asked Mike in the last class, like what was a book that he would recommend? Because so far, like my recommendations, like I've really enjoyed this book, New Sales Simplified by Mike Weinberg, because this is an old school way of sales, but brought into our it's only like a 2 or 3 year old book. So it's very relevant. And this one is called They Ask, You Answer. And this was recommended to me. So this is by Marcus Sheridan. And this is more like marketing and inside sales, like where you're trying to figure out how to qualify a lead, or if you're trying to figure out whether, like how to get good business through marketing campaigns. That's kind of that side of it. And Mike's book that he recommended, I've heard before and I've never read. And I put it on my list to actually get into. Shoot. One second. He was saying, oh yeah, The Ultimate Sales Machine. I'd heard that book before, but I had never read it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pick that up next. But
That
in
was
that,
what he referenced that at the beginning of the classes.
did he? I probably wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, I wrote something down. There is one. I'll have to look for that while you.
I was probably spacing out like I tend to do sometimes.
Don't tell him that. Don't say that.
Mike, hopefully you're not listening. You've got better things to do. But no, like that's where I started realizing like the focus that so many salespeople have is, and this is what I told a few people in the class, it was like me. It's all about me. And think about yourself. If you're ever listening to someone just talk about themselves, it's not interesting. It's usually not what you care about. Most people are somewhat selfish, and that's just kind of a nature of some people. They find things that they like interesting.
Well, all right. So you bring up a good point, because way back at the beginning, might have been the first or second class, one of the first statements that was made was, when does communication go undelivered? And at that time, we were kind of talking in the organizational structure, and we were doing a lot of that. So I'm gonna pose this question to you, going back, several weeks, with when does it go undelivered, and how do you, in what we just went through this week with how we were communicating ourselves, and what we have to offer as a profession or as an individual, where do you draw the line in differentiating yourself to your company, and vice versa? Like, when do you marry those two together, and then when do you separate them when you're in that conversation with someone, so that your message or what you're wanting to communicate doesn't go undelivered? and that's me coming as the artisan, where it's like, all right, dude, you got about 2 to 5 minutes, and you know, I may lose interest, or else we're gonna have to flip this, conversation.
Well, I think that's the beauty of not talking about what you do, right? I mean, you don't lose interest if I'm asking you questions about yourself and what you're interested in. And that's it. Like, the ending of the conversation is when they start realizing that you've been asking them questions the whole time. And they start asking you like 1 or 2 questions to understand, like, wow, you're really, let's say I was speaking with someone at this event and we connected on a topic that was actually talking about these programs and how we need to get out and advocate more and have an interest with advocating for better transportation and changes like that. And so we were discussing like urban planning topics. And he's like, well, that's when he started realizing that it was all conversation towards him, I think. And he was like, wait a minute, like, what do you do? It's like everyone has that at some point when they're like, I've been talking about myself for a long time and I should probably flip it back on that person. And so he did that.
Switch. Yeah.
He did that. And that's when I got a minute to like, oh yeah, so I've worked at so-and-so and I used to be working primarily as a landscape architect. And that's when like you can give a 2 to 3 sentence pitch of just like, it's not even a pitch, it's just information about yourself. And if they're engaged and interested, then you go further. But this is when it turns into a dialogue. The pitch itself turns into dialogue as you kind of give chunks. Because like the first 3 sentences of mine are very succinct of, here's my name, here's what I used to do, I've started this company, and here's an overview of what that is so you can grasp it. Because then they might say like, oh, that's interesting, I don't understand that. Can you talk more about it? And then you get the chance to do it again. It's like asking permission basically from the other person.
Engaging them. Well, and that's interesting to me. And I took a couple of notes here, so I'm going to be looking down and up and all that. But I think you bring up a great point there. And one of the other things that we learned, it might have been 3 or 4 classes ago, was about, that communication breakdown. And that breakdown being the responsibility of the sender. So as we engage in that, and we're trying to engage, educate, and entertain, there's got to be that flow.
Right.
So I'm going to go into another question. I'm going to bombard you here.
Yeah.
So educate me on, with that, avoiding that communication breakdown.
Okay.
When do you know how to push and pull, or pull back? Or maybe even, is there a time when it's like, or have you ever been in a situation where you've gone into that conversation, that communication might have, broken down or been interrupted? Because you're in situations where sometimes you've got outside noise and all that. Have you ever, or when do you realize like when to kind of disengage in that conversation? You're not necessarily severing it, but you're feel like getting awkward almost. Well, it's almost like you're trying to create an exit strategy, just because the circumstances around you, you don't have, and may not be your fault, but you don't have that 100% commitment for that communication to occur. Like, have you ever been in that situation where it's like too much excess noise, too much stuff going on, fast moving conversation? All right, I need to disengage. I need my exit strategy here. And then just to like essentially build a second pitch, or let's not say a second pitch, but a complementary pitch to go back in. Like,
right.
Is
like this more in a social
around.
setting you're thinking?
Yeah.
Or I'm trying to think, like when it's broken down is more like if I've been too aggressive with it. Because it's, if you
How,
sound,
all right, how, well, too aggressive, how so?
if I got like, if someone was working on a project that I knew about and I wanted to work with them,
Hmm.
and I didn't have a relationship with them yet. So to me, that's a big deal that I've learned doesn't work well, because there's already, you have to imagine there's already existing relationships in business, and people probably have a method that they have accomplished it up to this point, right? I mean, if you've done, if you're succeeding at your job, I'm sure you've done it some way with either working with someone or consulting or doing it in-house or whatever. But you have a method for achieving that. And if that person is doing something, I've gone into like, oh my God, yeah, this project is so cool. I'd love to partner with you on this job. Like that's way too forward. Like you can say like, that's a really neat job. I've actually looked into this more in the past and been interested with it. Who's helping you with that job right now? Like ask more questions to ease them into the conversation, because then you're not out of the gate asking for something, because then it stops being a conversation, which is casual and we're engaged with one another, and it becomes instantly, I want something from you. And that's where people are like, whoa.
Whoa, kind of step back.
Mhm. And does that sound kind of what you're asking? Because I want to be,
Yeah, I mean, because let's face it, we can sit here and practice these. I mean, and we need to. Trust me, like as I
yes.
mentioned at the beginning, I enjoyed this the most, even though like, you know, I was about ready to miss the bus, taking my daughter down to miss the bus. And had I done that twice with my wife being out of town for the week, I would have been in trouble. Well, I wouldn't have been in trouble, but my daughter's very time sensitive. She's like, Dad, I'm gonna be late for school. Like,
She's
doesn't
probably a
happen.
guardian.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm like, Claire, you lost me like 2 minutes ago. Don't worry. When we get a coffee, we'll drive across town to school. But so where was I going with it? So I guess it's,
Communication breakdowns and like, when does it go undelivered?
well, and then just when, because like I said, I loved this going through this exercise because, I mean, I'll admit it, I was scripted. And I think that was part of the environment that we were in, and also the exercise, because you're like, all right, I want to hit all these bullet points, and then you're like, all right, I can't do that. So you start, cutting back. But it's, creating that, there's an art in creating that mindful flow.
True.
And
How about this? How about this? What if I could actually I feel pretty confident I can break down this pitch that I had into its components, right? I mean, and like a thought process, because everyone's going to have their own goal. But if you hear someone else's pitch broken into like the deconstructed way, then it might help understand too. Like everyone has different goals with their pitch, and I don't know that everyone in our class is thinking about that enough. What is the goal from this conversation? And that's what the pitch is like, there's a goal. I want to achieve something in this relationship. How do I achieve that? Right?
Mhm.
So in mine, I've got 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph is, let me read it to you. My name's Borden Edgerton. I'm a licensed landscape architect here in Virginia, but I've transitioned away from my traditional role as a designer to start a new company called Forms by Federated. We've gathered a broad coalition of site product manufacturers to assist landscape architects in finding, researching, specifying solutions for their projects. Think of me like a free consultant that assists you from early design all the way through site installation. Like that is by itself 3 sentences that are comprehensive in 3 different things that I want to do. The first one is I'm connecting, like Mike talked about in
Mhm.
past I want to connect with someone. So who am I? I want to, if this is, I'm talking to a landscape architect, I want them to see that I'm a landscape architect as well. Immediately we have a connection. Oh, he understands my business. There's a lot of small nuance of like what people will connect there, and it's up to the person to connect that. But then I say immediately, I'm a landscape architect, but I've transitioned away from my design role to start a new company called Forms by Federated. So like I've intrigued them with being like, oh, he's not like me. He is like me, but he's not like me. And that's interesting because it's
There's a
different.
connection.
There's a connection, but it's different.
Yeah.
He's also started a company. That's interesting too. I wonder what it's about. Or maybe you don't care. Some people are like, yeah, I don't care. And I tell them just a brief, well, that first sentence is called "Don't bury the lead." And I don't bury the lead. The lead is here's a connection with me. I've started a new company. And then right immediately I tell them a basic bit about it. It does, like I've taken a whole bunch of site manufacturers and put them together so I can cater to landscape architects. Like that's the basics of that. So they have a little bit of understanding of what the company does, but then it's what does it do for me as a landscape architect? Well, I help you find, research, and specify solutions. And then the last part is a summary, because it's a lot of words, so you need to break it down in simple terms. So I just say, like, think of me like a free consultant that assists you from beginning to end. And people are like, okay, I get it. In a way, I mean, they don't get it, but it's in a quick conversation, that's a memorable takeaway. So the second part is basically a connecting point. You remember when I said, don't talk about yourself?
Mm-hmm.
This is a method of not talking about me, but talking about me indirectly. So I say, I found during my time as a landscape architect that I was strapped for time, or I knew there could be a better way to research and specify trusted products. I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about your role.
Me. Yeah.
And then I said, I figured it would be more efficient to bundle complementary manufacturers under a single point of contact who was knowledgeable and easy to work with. I'm still not talking about me, but I'm talking about my experience as a landscape architect and the frustrations that I had in that role that you have, and how this company could do it better indirectly. And then at the end, this last paragraph, I say, I've started working with several clients to great success. It reminds you that I have a business and I have clients and it's going well. It's just like, in case you were wondering, like, we're doing all right. It's like a confidence booster. And then I say, but I would like to partner with others that are a good fit, meaning that I have choice. I don't have to partner with you and you don't have to partner with me, because that's important to say, like, it's not desperate sounding. And then I accomplish, this is something that people pointed out to me in my pitch that they like keyed in on, was this next sentence. There's a lot more to unpack and you probably have questions, but I found it useful to arrange an introductory chat where I can learn more about your specific needs, talking about them still. But I'm acknowledging the obvious, which is like, I don't really understand what you're doing, but I kind of have an impression. And I'm glad that you acknowledged my internal thoughts that I was wanting to ask a bunch of questions, but I'm shutting that down because I don't want to talk about it now, because I found that it actually is useful to not talk about it because people get confused. So that's my own process of learning the message and delivery method.
Well,
right?
and once you want to talk about it more in a intimate setting with them, kind of, secondary, this is how we're going to connect again, or this is the little, piece of bread that I'm going to leave, to
Right.
hopefully you to follow. So let me ask you this. How long you been working on that?
Since probably a year or a year and a half. And even this time during this class, I changed it because I was like, I saw things that I hadn't seen before where I was like, oh, okay. The 60-second element, for instance, that was a new challenge that I had not taken before. And it was really good to boil it down even further.
So we're going to go kind of specific for those people that, you know, may watch this. So during our class, you know, we gave our little pitch.
Yeah.
And we got feedback. So you've been working on your pitch for how long again?
A long time, a year or more.
All right. And you've refined it numerous times. With where you got to with that pitch that you delivered on Wednesday, how did your comments come in? Were they what you thought? Did something come in you're like, oh, I never thought about that?
They were good comments. They were referring to how it's very smooth. It covers all the bases. It acknowledges things that they were thinking when I presented it. Like the objection of like saying like, well, I don't understand exactly what you do. Like I acknowledge that in the pitch because it's a critical point of connection. The problems that they have with it is one is just kind of, it's the nature of this, like it's too scripted. And that's natural because this is not a normal,
right?
I wouldn't say this to someone right out of the bat when I'm having cocktails at an opening event.
Yeah, and you know, in that situation, it's more of a relaxed, you know, that your pitch or your point's going to go much longer because you know you'll have interruptions or you'll have questions or you know things to that nature.
It'll be a discussion, right?
Yeah.
The other comment that I got was a big one. They said I didn't give enough information, and it's good that they said that, and it's intentional because I want to have a meeting. I don't want to have that meeting right there. I want to have a meeting. That's my, you know, they say there's always an ask at the end, like always be selling. Doesn't mean you're selling something, but it means that you're trying to achieve a goal. My goal is to get to know people better and to form a relationship. Like if I had to boil down the goal at large, it's to get to know people better and to have a relationship where I can be trusted. And I can't do that in a cocktail meeting and talk to them about the business, but I can start to do that if I have another meeting that's actually meant for business, where the presentation there can be me talking to them about what they do and what the company needs and what their personal needs and goals are. I can't do that there. So I intentionally don't want to talk about too much because people start asking questions so that they can figure it out. And I found in my time of trying to do this, that's not good. People try and put you into a box early so they can understand you. And this is a new concept. This business is not something that's out there, so they can't do that because it doesn't exist.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever thought, so where primarily do you do most of your business?
Can you be more
regional,
specific?
local, regional, local?
Mm-hmm.
Would you change anything if your, you know, business grew and you were more regional or coastal or, you know, expanding out to, you know, maybe a different state, different region?
I would, but no, actually I wouldn't, because I think it would be the model of the business would grow to adapt to the same model. Meaning like if I'm catering to one state, like that's very intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to be catering to myself being too large of an audience, because then you can't achieve the actual personal and dedicated relationship to someone. Because one of the biggest problems I see in this, like manufacturers that might go talk to you, PJ, or someone that's a design consultant, it's typically a regional rep. And they will reference 3 or 5 or more states. And so in reality, they are forced to pick clients that are going to give them the most business.
Mhm.
And for me, I didn't like that as a landscape architect. And that's not part of this business model for that reason. And so if this was a larger thing, I would train and have staff that would be dedicated to their region, so they don't have to be stretched thin or to not truly give back to the client that they're working with, if that makes sense. It's like,
Yes.
I'm better able to dedicate my time to a limited number of people versus trying to spread myself out over 3 to 5 states.
Okay, so I'm going to put you in another situation.
Okay.
Since I see you more as the subject matter expert in this scenario than I. So we do our pitch exercise and we get comments back.
Mm-hmm.
And you read down through your comments, and because you got to think, all right, we're trying to improve how we communicate, how we represent ourselves, how we attract people to what we do. So you're reading down through your comments, and I'm going to look over here at the sheet because it says, overall, what do you think they did well? So everyone comments back. This is what they did well. Okay. Overall, what do you think they could improve upon? And then you get these comments. So how do you work on improving your pitch if you mentioned earlier you kind of have 3 sections, right? And can you go over those 3 sections again?
Yeah, first, we're going to like describe what each section's achieving.
Yes. Let's go with the
First-
first one. So your first section, what's it achieving?
It's back to like those 4 C's, like connect, collaborate,
Okay.
all those things. Like I'm trying to connect with the person
All right.
and
Perfect.
explain a little bit about what we do.
So, and I'm trying to, I kind of want to hit on the value of why we need to continue this. So, all right. So you get your review back from our peers, and some of them say, you know, you're strong here. Your opening was relatable.
Mhm.
I'm in. And then someone comes back and says, I like the connection, but you know, you need to expand upon it. So you have one person in the room saying, you're relatable. I can appreciate that. I can connect to it. And you got the other person saying, it wasn't quite there yet.
Don't you think that could be part of their temperament too? Like that's why you have differing comments that are counter to each other?
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a point that I wanted to make for those people watching here is it's not an end all be all.
Right.
You know, you are ever evolving, and you're going to be able to read the body language or the comments or the, you know, the environment, the attitude to adapt. And I think that's very important, you know, as we try to communicate that it's fluid. It's kind of that, well, here, I gotta hop over real quick. It's that sort of attention grabbing, and it's not going to be the same for every person. So you're going to have to adapt to that. What you want to make sure, though, is that you still have that clear vision, you know, as you have to adapt. You don't want to, you know, stray from that. And then it's that solid plan to achieve your end goal, and the clarity of knowing when to exit, in my opinion.
The exit's tough. It's definitely, in a conversation, it's tough because
Yes.
you need to be paying attention to the other person. When are they losing interest? When are they wanting to go get another beer? That type of stuff.
Do you think is that the most challenging part?
No, I mean, it depends. If you are not intuitive with other people's body language or their eye movements, or are they looking elsewhere, or are they looking at another screen, like that's stuff that you need to read for that.
But when you get really passionate into a discussion, you can go on forever, really.
Yeah, but sometimes if you are really passionate about something and it shows, people do get interested. Not always, but many times they do.
So
they're trying to figure out, why is this guy so excited about like a new Doritos chip that came out or something?
Right. I mean, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Sometimes, it's just that kind of being prepared to be engaging and keeping that attention.
I would just, here's one thing to point out with like what these 60-second pitches are, I think, challenging someone in our field to think about the basics, which we've talked about, like engaging, entertaining. Here's my like 3 building blocks that you should be thinking of, which is basically like, are the client issues addressed in what I've talked about? Have I told them about anything of offering for service or product or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And am I different from someone else they might speak to that does the same thing? And that's really like, that's the bottom line of like any sort of pitch or talk, is it can be in a different format. Like you've talked about, like if you're at a networking meeting, it can be just discussion back and forth, but you should probably at some point, if you really are trying to win business with someone, you should hit on what you offer, how it helps the client, and how you're different. Because if you don't, you're not. And that's what I heard on our group, is that they've heard the same thing from other people, which aren't doing it well, and they've emulated that. And they've taken 60 seconds of saying, hi, my name's so-and-so. I'm a landscape architect at blah, blah, blah. And we work on these types of projects. And here at blah, blah, blah company, we're passionate about customer service, and we want you to excel. Like the customer is looking at you going, like you can almost audibly hear the sigh of like, I've heard this before. I've stopped listening sentence 3. This is not interesting. Because it's what everyone does. Everyone does that because they've not looked into what is it that I'm trying to achieve by saying all these words in a sentence.
What you said right there kind of goes back to our first class, and I wrote something down that Mike said, and that's got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and you're right. Sometimes I don't want to hear that. I know that it's something I already know.
Well, that's why you're so, not you, but that's why you're so uncomfortable in a situation, is because the words coming out of your mouth are not engaging and interesting, and you see it. Most of the time you see it, you're like, God, I just want to stop talking right now because I hate what I'm saying.
What is it? Most people listen for 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's the pitch. The pitch is trying to challenge us to think, yes, like, how would I say something for 60 seconds that addresses those 3 points of like, what does the client have for problems, to say that I understand their problems? What is the offering, and what is the actual like differentiator for me versus Joe Schmo over there.
Right.
And that's what I didn't hear at all, was like most people, and actually you were one of the only ones that had something interesting and different. And this is not a obvious ploy to talk to the person. It's something that's like, it was you and Aaron that had like a really good, engaging pitch and had value, I thought. And
well, it's funny that you say that, because and it kind of goes back to the question that I was asking you earlier with the beginning of yours. My feedback was across the board. You know, some were, you know, interested in that first, you know, couple sentences, and others were like, all right, let's move on. You know, I couldn't stop thinking about that, which then took away from the tail end and what you really have to offer. You know, I would say my pitch and what I do, working for government is much easier than yours. In that, what's that?
I was waiting for you to explain, but I was just going to ask the obvious question: why?
You know, that's a good question, actually. Maybe I said that because it's much easier for me. As my dog barks in the background, if you heard that.
We have a new person in the chat.
Yeah. Dang it, Bug. My children actually named our dog Bug. 2 G's.
I like that. That's a good dog name, actually.
His full name is actually Sir June Bug at Watershed. Bug for short. 2 G's. I guess.
Well, here, can I give
passion.
my critique?
It's passion for me.
Like
it's
my obvious, like overall of what I got out of yours was you, if I were a prospective business coming to Virginia Beach, then I would have looked at what made you different in that pitch and what was special about Virginia Beach and PJ and their department. And I already have preconceived notions just from working in the industry of what departments can be like.
Yeah.
And you address those in the pitch. You basically talked about how the collaboration is important between a entity, like a government entity, and the people that they work with to solve problems or to bring you there and keep you there. And this was a dialogue and a conversation that doesn't end here because it goes on further. And that was all great information for someone who is going to hear someone say like, oh, here at Richmond City, we have the best blah, 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 and the best blah, like it's just facts and figures.
We don't answer our phones.
We don't. Sorry, anyone that is from Richmond City. That was there's no reality in this at all.
Right.
but no, like that's what probably someone that would be trying to invest a new business location into your city would want to hear. And that's important. And you addressed it in like less than 60 seconds. Like it was good.
It's the connection. And I think maybe that's why maybe I think my pitch is easier. Because for me, it's a connection, you know, it's a relationship. But also, you know, yours is too. I don't know.
It's all relationships in every business. Yeah, but that's what I think a lot of people are missing.
And I think that really, maybe that really goes where I'm getting at is, you know, as we're working through this exercise, is it you that your pitch is about? Is it your company? Is it a project? Is it a certain sense of detail that you can bring that makes you stand out from others in the industry? And I don't think we know that until you find where your passion is. You know,
Well,
like I could have pitched our department. I could have pitched, our knowledge with our environment, that we live with, and all of our studies and everything that we've invested. But going through this exercise, I pitched kind of the community, and it was just something that I hooked on. Part of our logo or our motto is it's a community for a lifetime. And I guess that's where I made my connection. Is my wife's family's from here. My kids have grown up here. We're 3 generations deep in an area where, we're rooted. So that was it. That was, I guess I found my passion. And I guess one of the things that I find very valuable out of this exercise was we got to hear everyone's pitch and we got to hear some similarities. But when we started talking about it afterwards, when we were getting some comment, some one-on-one comment, I think that's where we started to realize that what makes that connection is where we're passionate. And while you might not be passionate about talking about your company, you have passion in what you can provide to someone through the development process or the design process. And I think that's where people need to focus to get that attention, to make that relationship.
yeah, and that passion needs to come through, but it also needs to be directed towards what the client or prospect or whoever
Absolutely.
you're speaking with cares about, because we have a lot of passions, but that's the whole point of this exercise, is like take it down to this one client type and what they might care about, because you do a lot of good things and you offer a lot of really excellent services. But if you're talking about a service that has nothing to do with what they're after, then you're not achieving your goal. And I think that's the biggest thing. That's why the actual connection point is so important. You have to listen. 2 ears, 1 mouth, and that's the ratio that you should be using them.
So then do you flip the switch there?
How so? What do you mean?
You make that connection with them. I mean, how many
Yes.
people do you meet and talk to?
Wait, say it again.
How many people do you meet and talk to in a month's time?
A lot. A lot of people.
So, and every one of them is at a different position in some kind of project or,
Yeah.
Okay.
That has been me gathering information over time.
So do you find it more valuable when you're doing your pitch to listen and then make that connection to them where their focus point is, where their, excitement is?
Yep.
And kind of allow that to allow that energy or that momentum in them to always be causing something in the conversation.
I try to. If I can connect with something, then I'm going to lead with what they're interested in. And it's an investigation at the beginning, because it's a real conversation. It's always a real conversation, but
So then
that's the goal, is you're gathering information so that you can talk more acutely to what that person likes, what they need, what they're frustrated with. Like, that's the whole point of sales. And that's what I think we as landscape architects miss a lot, is we might be speaking passionately about the environment or sea level rise or the way the landscape is not valued enough, but we've not done our homework when we do that, because we don't know whether this person even understands what we do, or whether they give a crap about sea level rise because they live in Roanoke or,
Right.
like that's exaggerated, but if you don't know who you're speaking with and you're speaking way too much about something that they don't relate to, then you need to bring them to that relationship. And it's another reason why I don't get into what I do that much in these conversations, because if I don't know enough information about them, then I can't have a good connection. And that's actually my first ask. There's always an ask. What's your end goal with a conversation? My end goal is a meeting. If I can get a meeting, then I can find out the relevant information in that meeting to figure out whether I can even help that person or not, without boring them to tears with stuff that I do that they don't give a rip about. Like my first meeting is not a sales meeting. It's called a discovery meeting. That's what I tell people. And they try. I've learned that over time that it doesn't work any other way for me in this business. It's, I think, kind of similar for a landscape architect though. If you're a landscape architect consultant and you're dealing with Henrico County, or you're dealing with Virginia Beach, and the person you're talking to doesn't understand your role or what you offer, then you're not going to win in a proposal, right? You've not differentiated yourself on paper. You have so much more of an advantage because they understand you if you've had a meeting to talk seriously about what they need as a county. And so anyone listening to this, I would say, at the very least, if you have prospective clients or people that work in an industry, that's why people take people out to lunch all the time. They're trying to understand them better so that when they answer that RFP statement, they can actually do it better and connect on the level that the person reading it would care about.
So you're bringing your own energy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
How do you build off of that? Or how do you know how to adapt to, I guess, their energy to make that, to make that ask, or to, strengthen your position?
It helps to have a broad range of interests. And if you don't, then get into different stuff and read more or watch more documentaries. Like, that's one of my passions, is just reading and learning about things that have nothing to do with what I do. That helps bring energy because you can actually get excited about what someone else's thing is. But like Mike does in the class, he brings a level of excitement because it's also something he does enjoy, which is leading these training sessions and seeing people advance. It's a mental exercise. If you can hype yourself up to not be nervous, but to see the opportunity when you're going into this. Like, I get tired. Like, when I left talking to you and Jesse last week, I was tired and the week was done. And I had to go to this event so I didn't know what was going to come out of it, but I had to mentally say, all right, you're going to go have a drink and get a little food, and it might be fun and you might meet some cool people. And that's what I tell myself every time, like, just go go do it. Stop thinking about how tired you are, or how you don't really want to talk to any more people this week because you're spent, your energy is gone. Like, that's more of a mental thing, I think. Like, stop talking about that in your head and just say, this is going to be great. Even if it's not going to be great, just say it's going to be great.
So do you ever divert yourself, because essentially you're telling that story, do you ever divert yourself just to gain that energy back?
I find that I actually get that energy back when I actually go and do that thing. Like I said, I was tired. Once I got there and started talking to people, I was energized again because I'm an extrovert. And Mike was talking about, if you're an introvert, you need to plan time where you can go away and recharge your batteries, That's part of understanding you yourself in that whole personality process too. But we have been going on for a while. I don't want to run this too long.
I haven't even been paying. Oh crap! Yeah, we have been. See what happens when we kind of flip the switch here.
Well, this is something that I enjoy talking about, so I tend to roll on about it. And it's
No,
not
like I said, this was my this was one of my more enjoyable weeks. Because to me the exercise was great. When I can see how the perspective that everyone takes, I enjoy that, because to me, like I said, where they came from, I think a good part of it was where their attention to detail is,
right,
you know, and where they focus in on their strengths. And you know, people are comfortable with talking about or focusing attention around where their strengths are, because it takes them out of that what I was saying earlier, takes them out of that uncomfortable position. You know, everybody, when they get hit with a question that they don't have an answer to, you're like, oof, you know, the wheels start turning. So
like I think you said it earlier too, like the more you do it, the better it gets. If it's exercise or getting on stage and performing, like whatever it is, like it gets better because it becomes more normal.
There's my dog again.
Bug.
Well, yeah. Well, and I'll say that because, you know, I do 2 public hearings every month. And, you know, I get questions from all different walks of life, all different types of people. And no matter how much I prepare going through the exercise like we did this week, there is always a question that is asked that myself or my group has not thought about and don't have the answer to. So kind of goes back to, no matter how much you prepare, there's always a situation where you're not going to have an answer, or you're not going to know a certain situation. And you've got to work your way through it.
Yeah.
You've got to take that uncomfortable situation and make it comfortable for you to be successful.
Right.
And I think that's what, for me, that's what this week did. And I enjoyed it. So
I'm looking forward to the rest of these too, because I think we're going to go over next time in class, next Wednesday. We're going to be talking more about the rest of the pitches that we've not heard. And I'm curious to see if those change, like not change,
yeah.
we haven't heard them, but if they change in the sense of like what most people were doing, now they have some feedback. Have they improved?
I've changed mine already.
Did you?
Yeah.
From tonight or from last session on Wednesday?
Last session on Wednesday.
Okay.
I think it was Wednesday night. I was like, all right, here we go.
Okay.
Change it a little bit.
How about next time? Are you in next week? Maybe next Friday we could rejoin this.
Absolutely.
Okay. I want to hear it. I want to hear it then.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
All right, man. We've gone pretty good time here. That was fun.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll join again next week. And I think we might get into maybe more about presentation, but there might be a chance we're getting into like some interesting topics of like closing or negotiations or handling objections from clients or people. So that'll be a new and interesting topic. So thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.